The Labours of Hercules by Agatha Christie. The 10th Labour, The Flock of Geryon. I really do apologise for intruding like this, Monsieur Poirot. Miss Carnaby clasped her hands fervently round her handbag and leaned forward, peering anxiously into Poirot's face. As usual, she sounded breathless. Hercule Poirot's eyebrows rose. She said anxiously, "You do remember me, don't you?" Hercule Poirot's eyes twinkled. "I remember you as one of the most successful criminals I have ever encountered." "Oh, dear me, Monsieur Poirot, must you really say such things? You were so kind to me. Emily and I often talk about you, and if we see anything about you in the paper, we cut it out at once and paste it in a book. As for Augustus, we've taught him a new trick. We say, 'Die for Sherlock Holmes, die for Mr. Fortune, die for Sir Henry Merivale, and then die for Monsieur Hercule Poirot,' and he goes down and lies like a log, lies absolutely still without moving until we say the word." "I am gratified. How is Cher Auguste?" Miss Carnaby clasped her hands and became eloquent in praise of her Pekingese. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot, he's cleverer than ever. He knows everything. Do you know, the other day I was just admiring a baby in a pram, and suddenly I felt a tug, and there was Augustus, trying his hardest to bite through his lead. Wasn't that clever?" It looks to me as though Augustus shared these criminal tendencies we were speaking of just now." Miss Carnaby did not laugh. Instead, her nice plump face grew worried and sad. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot, I'm so worried." "What is it?" "Do you know, Monsieur Poirot, I'm afraid, I really am afraid, that I must be a hardened criminal, if I may use such a term. Ideas come to me." "What sort of ideas?" "The most extraordinary ideas. For instance, yesterday a really most practical scheme for robbing a post office came into my head. I wasn't thinking about it, it just came. And another very ingenious way of evading custom duties. I feel convinced, quite convinced, that it would work." "It probably would. That is the danger of your ideas." "It has worried me, Monsieur Poirot, very much. Having been brought up with strict principles as I have, it's most disturbing that such lawless, such really wicked ideas should come to me. The trouble is partly, I think, that I have a good deal of leisure time now. I've left Lady Hoggin, and I'm engaged by an old lady to read to her and write her letters every day. But the letters are soon done, and the moment I begin reading she goes to sleep. So I'm left just sitting there, with an idle mind, and we all know the use the devil makes of idleness." "Recently I read a book, a very modern book, translated from the German. It throws a most interesting light on criminal tendencies. One must, so I understand, sublimate one's impulses. That's why I came to you, really." "Yes?" "You see, Monsieur Poirot, I think that it's really not so much wickedness as a craving for excitement. My life has unfortunately been very humdrum. The campaign for Pekingese dogs, I sometimes feel, was the only time I really lived. Very reprehensible, of course. But as my book says, one must not turn one's back on the truth. So I came to you, Monsieur Poirot, because I hoped it might be possible to sublimate that craving for excitement by employing it, if I may put it that way, on the side of the angels." "Aha," said Poirot. "It is then as a colleague that you present yourself." Miss Carnaby blushed. "It is very presumptuous of me, I know, but you were so kind." She stopped. Her eyes, faded blue eyes, had something in them of the pleading of a dog who hopes against hope that you will take him for a walk. "It is an idea—" "Oh, I'm of course not at all clever," explained Miss Carnaby, "but my powers of dissimulation are good. They have to be. Otherwise one would be discharged from the post of companion immediately, and I have always found that to appear even stupider than one is occasionally has good results." Poirot laughed. "You enchant me, mademoiselle." "Oh, dear Monsieur Poirot, what a very kind man you are. Then you do encourage me to hope? As it happens, I've just received a small legacy, a very small one, but it enables my sister and myself to keep and feed ourselves in a frugal manner, so that I am not absolutely dependent on what I earn." "I must consider where your talents may be best employed. You have no idea yourself, I suppose?" Well, you must be a thought-reader, Monsieur Poirot. I have been anxious lately about a friend of mine. I was going to consult you. Of course, you may say it's all old maid's fancy, just imagination. One is prone to exaggerate, perhaps, and see design where it may only be coincidence. I do not think you would exaggerate, Miss Carnaby. Tell me what is on your mind. Well, I've a friend, a very dear friend, though I've not seen much of her of late. Her name is Emmeline Clegg. She married a man in the north of England, and he died a few years ago, leaving her very comfortably off. She was unhappy and lonely after his death, and I'm afraid she's in some ways a rather foolish and perhaps credulous woman. Religion, Monsieur Poirot, it can be a great help and sustenance, but by that I mean orthodox religion. You refer to the Greek Church? Oh, no, indeed. Church of England. And though I do not approve of Roman Catholics, they are at least recognized, and the Wesleyans and Congregationalists, they are all well-known respectable bodies. What I am talking about are these odd sects. They just spring up. They have a kind of emotional appeal, but sometimes I have very grave doubts as to whether there is any true religious feeling behind them at all. You think your friend is being victimized by a sect of this kind? I do. Most certainly I do. The Flock of the Shepherd, they call themselves. Their headquarters is in Devonshire, a very lovely estate by the sea. The adherents go there for what they term a retreat. That's for a period of a fortnight, with religious services and rituals, and there are 3 big festivals in the year: the coming of the pasture, the full pasture, and the reaping of the pasture, which last is stupid because one does not reap pasture. The whole thing is stupid. The whole sect centres around the head of the movement. The Great Shepherd he's called, a Dr. Anderson, a very handsome-looking man, I believe, with a presence. Which is attractive to women, yes? I'm afraid so. Oh, my father was a very handsome man. Sometimes it was most awkward in the parish. The rivalry in embroidering vestments, and the division of church work. Are the members of the great flock mostly women? At least 3/4 of them, I gather. What men there are mostly cranks. It's upon the women that the success of a movement depends, and on the funds they supply. Now we come to it. Frankly, you think the whole thing is a romp. Frankly, Monsieur Poirot, I do. And another thing worries me. I happen to know that my poor old friend is so bound up in this religion that she's recently made a will leaving all her property to the movement. Poirot said sharply. Was that suggested to her? In all fairness, no. It was entirely her own idea. The Great Shepherd had shown her a new way of life, so all that she had was to go on her death to the great cause. What worries me is... Well, yes, go on. Several wealthy women have also been among the devotees, and in the last year 3 of them, no less, have died, leaving all their money to the sect. Yes! Their relations have made no protest. I should have thought it likely that there might have been litigation. You see, Monsieur Poirot, it's usually lonely women who belong to this gathering, people who have no very near relations or friends. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. Of course, I've no right to suggest anything at all. From what I've been able to find out, there was nothing wrong about any of the deaths. One, I believe, was pneumonia, following influenza, and another was attributed to gastric ulcer. There was absolutely no suspicious circumstances, and the deaths did not take place at the Green Hills Sanctuary, but at their own homes. I've no doubt it's quite all right, but all the same, I shouldn't like anything to happen to Emmy. Clasped her hands, her eyes appealed to Poirot. Poirot himself was silent for some minutes. When he spoke, there was a change in his voice. It was grave and deep. Will you give me, or will you find out for me, the names and addresses of these members of the sect who have recently died? Yes, indeed, Monsieur Poirot. Mademoiselle, I think you are a woman of great courage and determination. You have good histrionic powers. Would you be willing to undertake a piece of work that may be attended with considerable danger? I should like nothing better, said the adventurous Miss Carnaby. If there is a risk at all, it will be a grave one. You comprehend? Either this is a mare's nest, or it is serious. To find out which it is, it will be necessary for you yourself to become a member of the great flock. I would suggest that you exaggerate the amount of the legacy that you recently inherited. You are now a well-to-do woman, with no very definite aim in life. You argue with your friend Emmeline about this religion which she has adopted. Assure her that it is all nonsense, and she is eager to convert you. You allow yourself to be persuaded. You go down to the Greenhill Sanctuary, and there you fall a victim to the persuasive powers and magnetic influence of Dr. Anderson. I think I can safely leave that part to you." Miss Carnaby smiled modestly. "Oh, I think I can manage that all right." "Well, my friend, what have you got for me?" Chief Inspector Japp looked thoughtfully at the little man who asked the question. "Not at all what I'd like to have, Poirot. I hate these long-haired religious cranks like poison, filling up women with a lot of mumbo-jumbo. But this fellow's being careful. There's nothing one can get hold of. All sounds a bit batty, but harmless. Have you learned anything about this Dr. Anderson?" "I've looked up his past history. He was a promising chemist and got chucked out of some German university. Seems his mother was Jewish. He was always keen on the study of Oriental myths and religions, and spent all his spare time on that. He's written various articles on the subject. Some of the articles sound pretty crazy to me." "So it is possible that he is a genuine fanatic?" "Well, I'm bound to say it seems quite likely." "What about those names and addresses I give you?" "Oh, there's nothing doing there. Miss Everett died of ulcerative colitis. The doctor was quite positive no hanky-panky. Mrs. Lloyd died of bronchopneumonia. Lady Weston died of tuberculosis. Suffered from it for years, apparently, before she ever met this bunch. Miss Lee died of typhoid, attributed to some salad she ate somewhere in the north of England, and 3 of them got ill and died in their own homes. And Mrs. Lloyd, she died in a hotel in the south of France. As far as those deaths go, there's nothing to connect them with the great flock or with Anderson's place down in Devonshire. Must be pure coincidence. All absolutely okay and according to Cocker. Ah, and yet, mon cher, I have a feeling that this is the 10th labour of Hercules, and that this Dr. Anderson is the monster Geryon, whom it is my mission to destroy." "Oh, look here, Poirot. You haven't been reading any queer literature yourself lately, have you?" "My remarks are, as always, apt, sound, and to the point." You might start a new religion yourself. With the creed, 'There is no one so clever as Hercule Poirot.' Amen. D.C. Repeat ad lib." "It's the peace that I find so wonderful," said Miss Carnaby, breathing heavily and ecstatically. "I told you so, Amy," said Emmeline Clegg. The two friends were sitting on the slope of a hillside overlooking a deep and lovely blue sea. The grass was vivid green, the earth and the cliffs a deep glowing red. The little estate, now known as Greenhill's Sanctuary, was a promontory consisting about 6 acres. Only a narrow neck of land joined it to the mainland, so it was almost an island. Mrs. Clegg murmured sentimentally, "The red land, the land of glow and promise, where threefold destiny is to be accomplished." Miss Carnaby sighed deeply. "I thought the master put it so beautifully at the service last night. Wait for the festival tonight, the full growth of the pasture." "Oh, I'm looking forward to it. You'll find it a wonderfully spiritual experience." Miss Carnaby had arrived at Greenhill's Sanctuary a week previously. Her attitude on arrival had been, "Now what's all this nonsense? Really, Emmy, a sensible woman like you," etc., etc. At the preliminary interview with Dr. Anderson, she'd conscientiously made her position quite clear. "I don't want to feel that I'm here under false pretences, Dr. Anderson. My father was a clergyman of the Church of England, and I have never wavered in my faith. I do not hold with heathen doctrines." The big, golden-haired man who'd smiled at her, a very sweet and understanding smile, had looked indulgently at the plump, rather belligerent figure sitting so squarely in her chair. "Dear Miss Carnaby, you are Mrs. Clegg's friend, and as such welcome. And believe me, our doctrines are not heathen. Here all religions are welcomed and all honoured equally. "Then they shouldn't be," said the staunch daughter of the late Reverend Thomas Carnaby. Leaning back in his chair, the master murmured in his rich voice, "In my father's house are many mansions. Remember that, Miss Carnaby." As they left the presence, Miss Carnaby murmured to her friend, "He's really a very handsome man." "Yes, and so wonderfully spiritual." Miss Carnaby agreed. It was true, she had felt it, an aura of unworldliness, of spirituality. She took a grip upon herself. She was not here to fall prey to the fascination, spiritual or otherwise, of the great shepherd. She conjured up a vision of Hercule Poirot. He seemed very far away, and curiously mundane. "Amy," said Miss Carnaby to herself, "take a grip upon yourself. Remember what you're here for." But as the days went on, she found herself surrendering only too easily to the spell of Green Hills. The peace, the simplicity, the delicious though simple food, the beauty of the services with their chants of love and worship, the simple moving words of a master, appealing to all that was best in humanity. Here all the strife and ugliness of the world was shut out. Here was only peace and love. And tonight was the great summer festival, the festival of the full pasture. And at it she, Amy Carnaby, was to become initiated, to become one of the flock. The festival took place in the white glittering concrete building called by the initiates the Sacred Fold. Here the devotees assembled just before the setting of the sun. They wore sheepskin cloaks and had sandals on their feet. Their arms were bare. In the centre of the fold on a raised platform stood Dr. Anderson, the big man, golden-haired and blue-eyed, with his fair beard and his handsome profile. He'd never seemed more compelling. He was dressed in a green robe and carried a shepherd's crook of gold. He raised this aloft. A deathly silence fell on the assembly. "Where are my sheep?" The answer came from the crowd. "We are here, O shepherd." "Lift up your hearts with joy and thanksgiving. This is the feast of joy." "The feast of joy, and we are joyful." "There shall be no more sorrow for you, no more pain. All is joy." "All is joy." "How many heads has the shepherd?" "3 heads, a head of gold, a head of silver, a head of sounding brass." "How many bodies have the sheep?" 3 bodies, a body of flesh, a body of corruption, and a body of light." "How shall you be sealed in the flock?" "By the sacrament of blood." "Are you prepared for that sacrament?" "We are." "Bind your eyes and hold forth your right arm." The crowd obediently bound their eyes with the green scarves provided for the purpose. Miss Carnaby, like the rest, held her arm out in front of her. The great shepherd moved along the lines of his flock. There were little cries, moans of pain or ecstasy. Miss Carnaby said to herself fiercely, "Most blasphemous, the whole thing. This kind of religious hysteria is to be deplored. I shall remain absolutely calm, and I shall observe the reactions of the other people. I will not be carried away. I will not." The great shepherd had come to her. She felt her arm taken, held. There was a sharp, stinging pain, like the prick of a needle. "The sacrament of blood that brings joy." He passed on. Presently there came a command. "Unveil and enjoy the pleasures of the spirit." The sun was just sinking. Miss Carnaby looked around her. At one with the others she moved slowly out of the fold. She felt suddenly uplifted and happy. She sank down on a soft grassy bank. Why had she ever thought she was a lonely, unwanted, middle-aged woman? Life was wonderful. She herself was wonderful. She had the power of thought, of dreaming. There was nothing that she could not accomplish. A great rush of exhilaration surged through her. She observed her fellow devotees around her. They seemed suddenly to have grown to immense stature. "They are like trees walking." She lifted her hand. It was a purposeful gesture. With it she could command the earth. Caesar, Napoleon, Hitler, poor miserable little fellows. They knew nothing of what she, Amy Carnaby, could do. Tomorrow she would arrange for world peace, for international brotherhood. There should be no more wars, no more poverty, no more disease. She, Amy Carnaby, would design a new world. But there would be no hurry. Time was infinite. Minute succeeded minute, hour succeeded hour. Miss Carnaby's limbs felt heavy, but her mind was delightfully free. It could roam at will over the whole universe. She slept, but even as she slept she dreamt. Great spaces, vast buildings, a new and wonderful world. Gradually the world shrank. Miss Carnaby yawned. She moved her stiff limbs. What had happened since yesterday? Last night she had dreamt. There was a moon. By it Miss Carnaby could just distinguish the figures on her watch. To her stupefaction, the hands pointed to 10:15. The sun, as she knew, had set at 8:10. Only an hour and 35 minutes ago. Impossible! And yet... "Very remarkable," said Miss Carnaby to herself. Hercule Poirot said, "You must obey my instructions very carefully. You understand?" "Oh, yes, Monsieur Poirot, you may rely on me." "You have spoken of your intention to benefit the cult?" "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. I spoke to the master, Dr. Anderson, myself. I told him very emotionally what a wonderful revelation the whole thing had been, how I came to scoff and remained to believe. Well, really, it seemed quite natural to say all those things. Dr. Anderson, you know, he has a lot of magnetic charm." "So I perceive." "His manner was most convincing. One really feels he doesn't care about money at all. 'Give what you can,' he said, smiling in that wonderful way of his. 'If you can give nothing, it doesn't matter. You are one of a flock just the same.' 'Oh, Dr. Anderson,' I said, 'I'm not so badly off as that. I have just inherited a considerable amount of money from a distant relative, and though I cannot actually touch any of the money until the legal formalities are complied with, there is one thing I want to do at once.' And then I explained that I was making a will and that I wanted to leave all I had to the Brotherhood. I explained I had no near relatives." "And he graciously accepted the bequest?" "He was very detached about it. Said it would be many long years before I passed over, but he could tell I was cut out for a long life of joy and spiritual fulfilment. He really speaks most movingly." "So it would seem. You mentioned your health?" "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. I told him that I had had lung trouble, and that it had recurred more than once, but that a final treatment in a sanatorium some years ago had, I hoped, quite cured me." "Excellent." "Though why it's necessary for me to say I am a consumptive when my lungs are as sound as a bell, I really cannot see." "Be assured it is necessary. You mentioned your friend?" "Yes. I told him, strictly in confidence, that dear Emmeline, besides the fortune she'd inherited from her husband, would inherit an even larger sum shortly from an aunt who was deeply attached to her." "Ah, bien. That ought to keep Mrs. Clegg safe for the time being." "Oh, Monsieur Poirot, do you really think there is anything wrong?" "That is what I am going to endeavour to find out. Have you met a Mr. Cole at the sanctuary?" "There was a Mr. Cole there last time I went down. A most peculiar man. He wears grass-green shorts and eats nothing but cabbage. He's a very ardent believer." "All progresses well. I make you my compliments on the work you have done. All is now set for the autumn festival." "Miss Carnaby, just a moment." Mr. Cole clutched at Miss Carnaby, his eyes bright and feverish. "I have had a vision, a most remarkable vision. I really must tell you about it." Miss Carnaby sighed. She was rather afraid of Mr. Cole and his visions. There were moments when she was decidedly of the opinion that Mr. Cole was mad. And she found these visions of his sometimes very embarrassing. They recalled to her certain outspoken passages in that very modern German book of the subconscious mind which she'd read before coming down to Devon. Mr. Cole, his eyes glistening, his lips twitching, began to talk excitedly. "I'd been meditating, reflecting on the fullness of life, on the supreme joy of oneness, and then, you know, my eyes were opened, and I saw." Miss Carnaby braced herself and hoped that what Mr. Cole had seen would not be what he had seen the last time, which had been, apparently, a ritual marriage in ancient Samaria between a god and a goddess. "I saw." Mr. Cole leaned towards her, breathing hard, his eyes looking, yes, really they did, looking quite mad. "The prophet Elijah, descending from heaven in his fiery chariot." Miss Carnaby breathed a sigh of relief. Elijah was much better. She didn't mind Elijah. "Below were the altars of Baal, hundreds and hundreds of them. A voice cried to me, 'Look, write and testify that which you shall see.'" He stopped, and Miss Carnaby murmured politely, "Yes?" "On the altars were the sacrifices, bound there, helpless, waiting for the knife. Virgins, hundreds of virgins, young, beautiful, naked virgins." Mr. Cole smacked his lips. Miss Carnaby blushed. "Then came the ravens of Odin flying from the north. They met the ravens of Elijah, and together they circled in the sky. They swooped, they plucked out the eyes of the victims. There was wailing and gnashing of teeth, and the voice cried, 'Behold a sacrifice! For on this day shall Jehovah and Odin sign blood brotherhood.' Then the priests fell upon their victims. They raised their knives. They mutilated their victims." Desperately, Miss Carnaby broke away from her tormentor, who was now slavering at the mouth in a kind of sadistic fervour. "Excuse me one moment." She hastily accosted Lipscomb, the man who occupied the lodge which gave admission to Green Hills, and who providentially happened to be passing. "I wonder if you found a brooch of mine. I must have dropped it somewhere in the grounds." Lipscomb, who was a man immune from the general sweetness and light of Green Hills, merely growled that he hadn't seen any brooch. It wasn't his work to go around looking for things. He tried to shake off Miss Carnaby, but she accompanied him, babbling about the brooch, till she had put a safe distance between herself and the fervour of Mr. Cole. At that moment the master himself came out of the great fold, and emboldened by his benign smile, Miss Carnaby ventured to speak her mind to him. "Do you think that Mr. Cole was quite... The master laid a hand on her shoulder. "You must cast out fear. Perfect love casteth out fear." "But I think Mr. Cole is mad. Those visions he has." "As yet he sees imperfectly, through the glass of his own carnal nature. But the day will come when he shall see spiritually, face to face." Miss Carnaby was abashed. Of course, put like that, she rallied to make a smaller protest. "And really, need Lipscomb be so abominably rude?" "Lipscomb is a faithful watchdog. He has a crude, a primitive soul, but faithful, utterly faithful." He strode on. Miss Carnaby saw him meet Mr. Cole, pause, put a hand on Mr. Cole's shoulder. She hoped that the master's influence might alter the scope of future visions. In any case, it was only a week now to the autumn festival. On the afternoon preceding the festival, Miss Carnaby met Hercule Poirot in a small tea-shop in the sleepy little town of Newton Woodbury. Miss Carnaby was flushed and even more breathless than usual. She sat sipping tea and crumbling a rock bun between her fingers. Poirot asked several questions, to which she replied monosyllabically. Then he said, "How many would there be at the festival?" "I think 120. Emmeline is there, of course, and Mr. Cole. Really, he has been very odd lately. He has visions. He described some of them to me, really most peculiar. I do hope he's not insane. There will be quite a lot of new members, nearly 20. "Good. Now you know what you have to do." There was a moment's pause before Miss Carnaby, rather in an odd voice, said, "I know what you told me, Monsieur Poirot." "Très bien." "But I'm not going to do it." Hercule Poirot stared at her. Miss Carnaby rose to her feet. Her voice came fast and hysterically. "You sent me here to spy on Dr. Anderson. You suspected him of all sorts of things, but he's a wonderful man, a great teacher. I believe in him heart and soul, and I'm not going to do your spying work any more, Monsieur Poirot. I am one of the sheep of the shepherd." The Master has a new message for the world, and from now on I belong to him body and soul. And I'll pay for my own tea, please." With which slight anticlimax, Miss Carnaby plonked down 1 threepence and rushed out of the tea-shop. "Oh, no, 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 no!" The waitress had to ask him twice before he realised that she was presenting the bill. He met the interested stare of a surly-looking man at the next table, flushed, paid the cheque, and got up and went out. He was thinking furiously. Once again the sheep were assembled in the great fold. The ritual questions and answers had been chanted. "Are you prepared for the sacrament?" "We are." "Bind your eyes and hold out your right arm." The great shepherd, magnificent in his green robe, moved along the waiting lines. The cabbage-eating, vision-seeing Mr. Cole, next to Miss Carnaby, gave a gulp of painful ecstasy as the needle pierced his flesh. The great shepherd stood by Miss Carnaby. His hands touched her arm. "No, you don't! None of that!" Words incredible, unprecedented. A scuffle, a roar of anger. Green veils were torn from eyes to see an unbelievable sight. The great shepherd struggling in the grasp of the sheep-skinned Mr. Cole, aided by another devotee. In rapid professional tones the erstwhile Mr. Cole was saying, "And I have here a warrant for your arrest. I must warn you that anything you say may be used in evidence at your trial." There were other figures now at the door of the sheepfold, blue uniformed figures. Someone cried, "It's the police! They're taking the Master away! They're taking the Master!" Everyone was shocked, horrified. To them the great shepherd was a martyr, suffering as all great teachers suffer, from the ignorance and the persecution of the outside world. Meanwhile, Detective Inspector Cole was carefully packing up the hypodermic syringe that had fallen from the great shepherd's hand. "My brave colleague!" Poirot shook Miss Carnaby warmly by the hand and introduced her to Chief Inspector Japp. "First-class work there, Miss Carnaby. We couldn't have done it without you, that's a fact." "Oh, dear!" Miss Carnaby was flattered. "It's so kind of you to say so. And I'm afraid, you know, that I really enjoyed it all. The excitement, you see, and playing my part. I got quite carried away sometimes. I really felt I was one of those foolish women."
"And that's where your success lay," said Japp. "You were the genuine article. Nothing less would have taken that gentleman in. He's a pretty astute scoundrel."
Miss Carnaby turned to Poirot. "Oh, that was a terrible moment in the tea-shop. I didn't know what to do. I just had to act on the spur of the moment."
"You were magnificent. For a moment I thought that either you or I had taken leave of our senses. I thought for one little minute that you meant it."
"It was such a shock. Just when we'd been talking confidentially, I saw in the glass that Lipscomb, who keeps the lodge of the sanctuary, was sitting at the table behind me. I don't know now if it was an accident or if he'd actually followed me. As I say, I had to do the best I could on the spur of the minute. I trust you'd understand."
"I did understand. There was only one person sitting near enough to overhear anything we said, and as soon as I left the tea-shop I arranged to have him followed when he came out. When he went straight back to the sanctuary, I understood. I knew that I could rely on you and that you would not let me down. But I was afraid because it increased the danger for you."
"Was there really danger? What was in that syringe?"
Japp said, "Will you explain, or shall I?"
"Mademoiselle, this Dr. Anderson had perfected a scheme of exploitation and murder, scientific murder. Most of his life he had been spent in the bacteriological research. Under a different name he has a chemical laboratory in Sheffield, and there he makes cultures of various bacilli. It was his practice at the festivals to inject into his followers a small quantity of cannabis indica, which is known by the names of hashish or bhang. This gave delusions of grandeur and pleasurable enjoyment. It bound his devotees to him. These were the spiritual joys that he promised them." "Most remarkable. Really, it was a most remarkable sensation."
"That was his general stock in trade. A dominating personality, the power of creating mass hysteria, and the reactions produced by the drug. But he had a second aim in view. Lonely women, in their gratitude and fervour, made wills leaving their money to the cult. One by one these women died. They died in their own homes, apparently of natural causes. Without being too technical, I will try to explain. It is possible to make the intensified cultures of certain bacteria, the Bacillus coli communis, for instance, the cause of ulcerative colitis. Typhoid bacilli can be introduced into the system. So can the pneumococcus. There is also what is termed old tuberculin, which is harmless to a healthy person, but which stimulates any old tubercular lesion into activity. You perceive the cleverness of a man. These deaths would occur in different parts of the country, with different doctors attending them, and without any risk of arousing suspicion. He had also, I gather, cultivated a substance which has the power of delaying but intensifying the action of a chosen bacillus.
He's a devil, if ever there was one.
By my orders, you told him that you were a tuberculosis subject. There was old tuberculin in the syringe when Cole arrested him. Since you were a healthy person, it would not have harmed you, which is why I made you lay stress on that trouble. I was terrified that even now he might choose some other germ. But I respected your courage, and I had to let you take the risk.
Oh, that's all right. I don't mind taking risks. I'm only frightened of bulls in fields and things like that. But have you enough evidence to convict this dreadful person?
Japp grinned.
Plenty of evidence. We've got his laboratory and his cultures. We've got the whole layout.
It is possible, I think, that he has committed a long line of murders. I may say that it was not because his mother was a Jewess that he was dismissed from a German university. That merely made a convenient tale to account for his arrival here and to gain sympathy for him. Actually, I fancy he is of pure Aryan blood. Miss Carnaby sighed. Qu'est-ce que c'est? I was thinking of a marvellous dream I had at the first festival. Hashish, I suppose. I arranged the world so beautifully. No wars, no poverty, no ill health, no ugliness.
It must have been a very fine dream.
Oh, I've got to get home. Emily has been so anxious. Dear Augustus has been missing me terribly, I hear. Hercule Poirot said with a smile. He was afraid, perhaps, that, like him, you were going to die for Hercule Poirot.